Laura stood at the edge of the cafe, staring at the small amount of cash she had left in her purse. The week had been hard, and today seemed like the last straw. After paying bills, buying groceries, and trying to keep up with her daily expenses, she had only $1 left. It was a little after noon, and she was feeling a mix of exhaustion and anxiety. She had been working hard at her entry-level office job, but it didn't pay enough to make ends meet. As she glanced around the cafe, the warm smell of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries teased her senses, but she knew that she had to be careful with her money. The dollar she had was all she had left for lunch today, and she couldn't afford to spend it recklessly. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten much that morning. With a sigh, she walked toward the counter, trying to make up her mind. A sandwich, a drink? She was so used to counting pennies that the decision felt like an important one. She chose a small, affordable salad. She looked at the price tag and almost hesitated. The salad was more than she wanted to spend, but she had already committed. As she fumbled for her wallet, trying to make sure she had exactly $1 in her hand, she noticed the man behind her in line. He looked like he had just walked in from the street. His clothes were a bit wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and his eyes looked tired. He stood a little too close behind her, and when she turned, she saw that he was awkwardly holding a handful of change in his hand. He was searching his pockets, his expression a mix of frustration and confusion. Laura could tell he was short on cash, and it reminded her of how she'd been feeling the past few weeks, stretched thin with barely enough to cover anything. She didn't know why, but she felt compelled to do something. Even though she was in the same boat, the man hesitated again, glancing at the cash register and then at Laura. Without really thinking it through, Laura turned toward the cashier. "I'll cover his lunch," she said, offering her last dollar. The man's face lit up in surprise. He started to protest, but Laura smiled and reassured him. "It's fine. You don't need to worry about it." He hesitated for a moment longer, then nodded and stepped aside. "Thank you," he said, and there was something in his voice that made Laura believe he was genuinely grateful. He didn't look like someone who was used to receiving help, and Laura felt a warmth spread through her chest. She took a moment to let the kindness of the act sink in. It wasn't much, but it felt like the right thing to do. She paid for both her meal and the stranger's lunch, and they shared a brief moment of acknowledgement as he left the counter. She watched him walk toward the door, feeling good about her decision. The lunch she had bought for him wasn't going to change her circumstances, but at least she had done something positive. After her meal, Laura left the cafe with a small sense of pride. She knew she didn't have a lot to give, but the fact that she had given something, anything, felt like a win. It was easy to get caught up in the struggles of daily life, and sometimes a small act of kindness could make everything seem a little brighter. She had no idea who that man was, or what kind of life he lived, but something told her that she would never forget him. The next day, Laura felt a little lighter as she started her morning. She was still dealing with the same challenges, but there was something about the kindness she had extended to the stranger that stayed with her. It was a small moment, but it had left an impression. The morning sunlight filtered in through her apartment window, casting a soft glow across the room as she sat at her small kitchen table, sipping her coffee. The clock ticked away as she mentally prepared herself for the day ahead. There was work to get done, and then there was the interview. She had applied for a position at a well-known company a few weeks ago, and after days of not hearing back, she had nearly forgotten about it. But to her surprise, she received an email that morning. "We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected for an interview." Laura's heart raced as she read the email again, her hands shaking slightly. This could be the break she had been waiting for. The position was for a junior analyst role. Nothing too fancy, but it was a step up from her current job. It promised stability, a chance for growth, and a better salary. The nerves she had been feeling all morning turned into excitement. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She quickly checked her calendar. The interview was scheduled for the next day, which left her with little time to prepare. She gathered all her notes, her resume, and her research about the company. She spent the rest of the day rehearsing, making sure she could answer all the common interview questions and present herself in the best possible light. Despite the preparation, the nerves lingered. She tried to focus on the positive. This was an opportunity, a chance to prove herself. But as the day drew to a close, her anxiety crept in. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she said the wrong thing? What if she froze up during the interview? That night, she didn't sleep well. Her mind raced as she lay in bed, replaying every conversation she had ever had with a hiring manager. Would she get this job? Or would it be just another disappointment? The next morning, Laura woke up early. The sun had barely risen, and the world outside her window was still quiet. She got ready, carefully choosing a blouse that she hoped would make a good impression. She checked her appearance in the mirror, reminding herself to stay confident and professional. But as she stared at her reflection, doubt crept in again. She quickly pushed those thoughts aside. Today wasn't about self-doubt. It was about showing them what she could do. She packed her things, grabbed her bag, and headed out the door. The interview was being held in the city's business district, a place Laura wasn't too familiar with. As she walked down the crowded streets, she tried to keep her nerves in check, but they were impossible to ignore. She had seen the building before, a towering glass structure that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. The company had a reputation for being selective, and Laura knew that getting this job wouldn't be easy. She arrived early, as she always did for interviews, and took a seat in the company's sleek and modern lobby. The space was polished and professional, and it made Laura feel even more out of place. She wasn't used to being in such high-end environments. She sat there trying to calm her nerves, but her mind was racing again. She glanced over her resume for the 100th time, making sure there were no mistakes. She checked the clock and saw that it was almost time. Her stomach flipped with anxiety. And then, as if to add to her unease, the door to the elevator opened and a man walked out. He was impeccably dressed in a sharp suit, looking every bit the part of a powerful executive. He had a calm, confident stride, and as he walked past Laura, their eyes met for a brief moment. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't quite place it. He gave her a polite smile as he continued toward the reception desk. Laura tried to brush it off, but the brief encounter left her unsettled. She looked down at her phone, trying to distract herself. Her thoughts wandered to the interview. What would they ask her? Would she be able to handle it? A few minutes later, she was called into the conference room. She stood up, straightening her blouse and walking into the room with as much confidence as she could muster. Inside, there was a large conference table surrounded by chairs, and at the head of the table sat a man she immediately recognized, the same man from the cafe. The man she had helped yesterday. Her heart skipped a beat. There he was, sitting in front of her, looking every bit the part of a CEO. He wore a tailored suit, his hair neatly combed, and his expression was calm and composed. He looked like a completely different person than the one she had helped in the cafe the day before. The moment stretched out as they both stared at each other. Laura could feel her stomach tightening, the realization hitting her all at once. The man from yesterday, the stranger she had helped, was now sitting across from her, about to interview her for a job. He smiled at her, a little amused, as if he recognized the shock on her face. "Well, this is quite the coincidence, isn't it?" he said. Laura nodded, feeling the blood rush to her cheeks. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words got caught in her throat. "I never forget a kind gesture," he continued, his voice warm. "Thank you again for helping me yesterday." "That was very generous of you." Laura felt her face flush even more. She had no idea what to say. It was almost too much to process. Yesterday, she had helped a stranger, someone who now turned out to be the CEO of the very company she was interviewing with. "Please, take a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. As Laura sat down, she couldn't help but think how surreal this entire situation felt. Was this some kind of test? Was this a coincidence, or was there more to it? The questions swirled in her mind, but she tried to focus on the interview ahead. The CEO looked at her with a calm, reassuring gaze. "I've had a chance to look over your resume," he said. "You seem like you're a great fit for this role." Laura tried to steady herself. This was the moment she had worked for, the moment that could change her life. But her mind kept drifting back to the encounter at the cafe, to the kindness that had led to this moment. She had no idea how this would all play out, but she knew one thing for sure. This was going to be an interview unlike any other. The room felt quieter than it should have. Laura sat across from the man who had been nothing more than a stranger just a day ago, yet now was the CEO of the very company she had hoped to work for. She tried to focus, but the surreal nature of the situation kept pulling at her thoughts. He was sitting there, calm, confident, dressed in a sharp suit, everything about him polished and professional. The version of him she had helped yesterday in the cafe felt like a distant memory, almost unreal. For a brief moment, they just stared at each other. She could see a flicker of recognition in his eyes, the same way she felt, this strange unspoken connection between them. She was the one who had helped him out of a jam, and now here they were on opposite sides of an interview table. The realization hit her again like a wave. She was interviewing for a job with a man she had once helped in the most unremarkable way. "I didn't expect to see you here today," he said, breaking the silence, his tone light but sincere. "I know this must be a little surprising, but I promise you, it doesn't change the fact that I'm here to learn more about you as a candidate." Laura nodded, trying to gather her thoughts. Her mind raced as she wondered what this meeting meant. Was it fate? Or was this something more? "First, let me just say that I'm grateful for your kindness yesterday," he continued. "It wasn't much, but you paid for my lunch when I was short on cash. That's not something I take lightly." Laura shifted uncomfortably in her seat, unsure of how to respond. She had no idea that this simple act of kindness would lead to such a monumental moment. She had no idea who he was, just a man who looked like he was having a rough day. But now, sitting across from him, she couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and nervousness. "I'm happy I could help," she said, forcing a smile. "I just did what anyone would have done." The CEO chuckled softly. "I don't know about that. People can be pretty quick to judge others, especially when they don't know their story. You didn't hesitate, and for that I'm thankful." He paused, studying her for a moment. "But we're not here to talk about that, are we? Let's get to the reason why you're here." Laura took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. This was the moment she had been preparing for. She had done the research. She knew the job description inside and out. But she wasn't prepared for the man across from her, the one who seemed to be seeing right through her. She had spent so many nights worrying about how she would perform in this interview, how she would make the right impression, and yet now, everything felt different. There was an unspoken tension in the room, something she couldn't shake. It wasn't just the job. It was this strange, unexpected connection between them. "So," he said, flipping through her resume, "I see you have experience in customer service and office administration. That's a solid foundation. Tell me about a time when you had to handle a difficult situation at work." Laura took a moment to collect her thoughts. She had been in plenty of difficult situations. The office she worked at now was filled with its share of challenges: tough clients, tight deadlines, and often long hours with little recognition. She thought back to a particular incident when a major client had threatened to leave over a mistake, and Laura had been the one to smooth things over. "There was this one time when a client was upset about an error on our end," she began. "They were ready to walk away, but I knew how important they were to the company. So I took the initiative to reach out personally, explain the situation, and offer a solution. It wasn't easy, but in the end we were able to salvage the relationship. And the client stayed with us." The CEO listened intently, nodding occasionally as she spoke. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, looking thoughtful. "That's a great example of problem-solving and perseverance," he said. "I can tell you're someone who doesn't shy away from challenges. That's important here." Laura couldn't help but feel a little proud of herself. Despite her nerves, she was doing okay. The CEO seemed to appreciate her answers, but there was still something nagging at her, something that she couldn't quite put her finger on. Was he judging her for helping him yesterday? Was this an opportunity, or was he testing her in some way? He seemed to read her mind. "I want you to know," he said, his voice calm and reassuring, "that everything we talk about today is about your qualifications and your character. The fact that you helped me yesterday doesn't change any of that. I'm here to focus on your abilities and what you can bring to this company." Laura nodded, trying to calm herself. She had prepared for the technical questions, for the usual interview format, but she hadn't prepared for this. This was a conversation, not just an interview, and it was making her feel both comfortable and uneasy all at once. They spent the next few minutes discussing her work history, her skills, and her goals. The CEO asked about her future ambitions, and Laura shared her desire for growth, her eagerness to take on new challenges. She spoke confidently now, gaining momentum with each question, until she was in a rhythm. But then, just as the conversation started to settle into the routine of a typical interview, the CEO shifted gears. "What's the most important lesson you've learned in life?" he asked, his gaze piercing. The question caught Laura off guard. She wasn't expecting something so personal, so deep. She thought for a moment, the weight of his question settling in. What was the most important lesson she had learned? She could have easily gone into the typical responses about perseverance or hard work, but something inside her told her to be honest, to dig a little deeper. I think the most important lesson I've learned is that kindness can go a long way, she said slowly, choosing her words carefully. It's easy to get caught up in your own struggles and forget about the people around you. But when you show kindness, even in small ways, it can make a difference. That's something I try to remember every day. The CEO smiled, his expression softening. I agree, he said. Kindness is often undervalued, but it's something that can change the course of a person's life. I've seen it firsthand. For a moment, there was a silence between them, a kind of mutual understanding. It was as though the conversation had transcended the formalities of an interview. It felt like something more, something meaningful. I think that's why I'm here, the CEO said, breaking the silence, not just to fill a position, but to find people who understand the value of kindness, who understand what it means to work together for something bigger than themselves. That's what we're building here. Laura was taken aback by his words. She had always focused on technical skills, experience, and qualifications in her job search. But hearing him speak about the importance of kindness and character made her realize that maybe this job wasn't just about what she could do on paper. It was about who she was as a person. The conversation continued, but by the end, Laura felt a sense of clarity. She had come to this interview thinking about all the ways she needed to impress the CEO, to show him that she was the right fit for the job. But now she realized that he had been just as focused on who she was as a person. Her actions, her character, these things mattered more than she had initially thought. The interview wrapped up and Laura stood to leave, her mind spinning. The CEO walked her to the door, his demeanor professional but warm. Thank you for your time, he said, shaking her hand firmly. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. As Laura stepped out of the room and into the hallway, she couldn't help but smile. This interview had been unlike any other she had experienced. It had been real, human, and full of unexpected connections. And she realized that in the end, the job wasn't just about the position, it was about the values they shared. The days after the interview felt like a blur for Laura. Every time she checked her phone, she half expected a message, an email, or a call to come through, but nothing came. She did her best to stay busy at work, focusing on her tasks and trying not to think about the interview too much, but no matter how much she tried to distract herself, the uncertainty lingered. Her mind kept returning to the conversation with the CEO. It had been so different from any interview she had ever had. There were no hard questions about her qualifications, no grilling about her past mistakes. Instead, it felt more like a conversation between two people who were trying to understand each other, people with shared values, not just a boss and a potential employee. But would that be enough? Could a conversation about kindness and character really replace the usual qualifications and experience that most companies looked for? She had gone into the interview with so many expectations, yet it felt like the experience had taught her more about herself than it had about the job. She had always believed that getting hired was about fitting into a mold, proving you had the right skills and answering the right questions in the right way. But now she wondered if maybe it was about something more. 2 days passed since the interview, and Laura couldn't keep herself from wondering if she'd done enough to impress the CEO. The way he had looked at her during the conversation, the way he seemed to understand her in a way that most people didn't, it made her second-guess herself. Had she said the right things? Had she shown enough of who she was? The next morning, as Laura sat in her small apartment sipping her coffee, her phone buzzed. She jumped, almost spilling the hot liquid on her lap. It was a message from an unknown number. Her heart raced as she unlocked the phone, her thoughts immediately going to the interview. Could it be? Could they be calling to let her know? But when she opened the message, it wasn't what she expected. The words on the screen made her pause. Hi, this is the CEO from the interview. I just wanted to reach out and thank you again for your time. After careful consideration, we've decided to move forward with other candidates. I appreciate your interest in the role and wish you all the best. It felt like a punch to the gut. All the hope she had built up over the past few days. The hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the job that changed everything, suddenly crumbled. She read the message over and over, trying to make sense of it, but there was no getting around the reality. She hadn't gotten the job. For a moment, the disappointment hit hard. She had put so much effort into preparing, into believing that this could be her chance. But now it was over, just like that. But then something shifted. Instead of the wave of frustration and self-doubt she expected to feel, a sense of calm washed over her. She realized that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. Sure, she didn't get the job, but the experience, this whole journey, had taught her so much more than she had expected. It had shown her the power of kindness, the value of staying true to herself, and the importance of building connections beyond resumes and interviews. She took a deep breath and set the phone down. She would be okay. This wasn't the end of her story. It was just another chapter. 2 weeks passed and Laura threw herself back into her work. She focused on improving herself, on learning new skills, and on taking small steps to move forward. Despite the rejection, she found herself feeling more hopeful than she had in months. She wasn't waiting for the perfect job to fall into her lap anymore. She was taking control of her own journey. Then, just as she was getting into the rhythm of things, another message arrived on her phone. "Hi, Laura, it's the CEO. I know it's been a while since our interview, but I wanted to reach out to you personally. I've been thinking a lot about our conversation and wanted to offer you something. We have a different role open now, and I believe you'd be a great fit for it. Would you be open to discussing it further?" Her breath caught in her throat. She stared at the message, rereading it several times to make sure she wasn't imagining things. Was this some sort of mistake? After everything, after the rejection, now they were offering her something else? The message was brief, but it was enough to make her heart race. She quickly replied, agreeing to meet. The excitement bubbled up inside her, but there was also a sense of caution. She had been here before, right? Rejection had stung, and now this new possibility felt like a twist she didn't quite understand. The following day, she met the CEO again, this time in a smaller, more casual meeting room in the company's office. He greeted her warmly, and they exchanged pleasantries before he sat down. "I've been thinking about you a lot since our interview," he began. "And I wanted to be upfront with you. I'm offering you a role, but it's not the one you interviewed for. I think you'd be better suited for a different position. It's not junior analyst, but it's something I think you'd be really good at. It's a position that requires someone with a strong sense of empathy, someone who can understand others and build relationships. And that's something I saw in you during our interview." Laura was stunned. She hadn't expected this. She had gone into the interview hoping for one thing, and now here she was, being offered something entirely different. She felt a mix of emotions, relief, excitement, confusion. Was she ready for this? Was this the path she had envisioned? The CEO leaned forward, his expression sincere. "I believe in what we discussed. I don't just want people with the right technical skills. I want people who can connect with others, who can build relationships, and who can lead with empathy. I see that in you." Laura felt a lump form in her throat. This wasn't what she had expected at all. This wasn't just about the job. It was about the person she was, about who she had shown herself to be in that interview. And that, she realized, was the most important thing of all. As they talked more about the role and what it entailed, she began to feel more confident. This was an opportunity she hadn't anticipated, but it was one that felt right. Maybe it wasn't exactly what she thought she wanted, but perhaps it was what she needed. By the time she left the meeting, her mind was buzzing with possibilities. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew this was a turning point in her journey. Whether she took the job or not, the past few weeks had taught her more than she could have ever expected. They had taught her about the value of kindness, the power of connection, and the importance of staying true to herself, even in the face of uncertainty. A few days after her meeting with the CEO, Laura found herself reflecting more and more on what had happened. She couldn't shake the sense that this entire journey, from the chance encounter at the cafe to the unexpected job offer, had been one of the most transformative experiences of her life. The emotions she had felt in the moment, the mix of excitement and uncertainty, were still fresh in her mind. The new job offer wasn't exactly what she had expected, and it wasn't the role she had originally interviewed for. But as she thought about the conversation with the CEO, she realized that maybe it was even better than what she had imagined. It was a position that aligned with her values, one that required empathy, a willingness to connect with others, and an ability to build relationships. These were qualities she valued deeply, but had never considered might be the foundation for her career. The first few days after the offer were filled with a whirlwind of emotions. She spent her evenings mulling over the details of the position, wondering if she was making the right decision. She talked to her friends and family, seeking their opinions, but in the end, it was her own gut feeling that she trusted the most. The role would challenge her in ways she hadn't experienced before, but it felt like the right step forward, not just for her career, but for her personal growth. One evening, after work, Laura sat down with her phone in hand, her thoughts still swirling. She was about to send the CEO an email accepting the position, but before she hit send, she paused. She couldn't help but feel that this moment deserved more than just a simple response. She needed to express her gratitude, to acknowledge how much this offer had meant to her. With a deep breath, she began typing. Dear CEO's name, I wanted to take a moment to thank you for the opportunity to join your team. When we spoke during the interview, I never imagined that a small act of kindness could lead to something so meaningful. I've been reflecting a lot on what you said about the role, and I realize that this isn't just a job, it's a chance to grow, to challenge myself, and to make a difference in ways I never expected. Your belief in the value of empathy and connection resonated deeply with me. It's not just about the technical skills or the qualifications. It's about being a person who can contribute to something bigger than oneself. That's something I want to be a part of, and I'm honored by your offer. Thank you again for believing in me. I'm excited to begin this new chapter with your team. Sincerely, Laura. She read the email one more time before clicking send. It was more than just a job acceptance, it was her acknowledgement of the unexpected journey that had led her to this point. And with that, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever came next, she knew she had made the right choice. The following weeks were filled with the usual whirlwind of preparations. Laura spent her days learning about her new role, meeting her future colleagues, and getting acquainted with the company's culture. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, but there was also a sense of calm, knowing she had made the right decision. The CEO had made it clear that the role wasn't just about her qualifications, it was about her ability to connect, to lead with empathy, and to be someone who could help others feel heard and understood. As she prepared for her first day, she couldn't help but think about the people she had encountered along the way. The stranger in the cafe, the CEO, the colleagues she had already met. They had all played a part in shaping this journey. Every moment, every interaction, had somehow brought her closer to where she was now. On her first day, Laura walked into the office with a sense of anticipation. The space was sleek and modern, filled with bright windows that allowed the sunlight to pour in. The atmosphere felt welcoming, warm, and collaborative. It wasn't the stiff corporate environment she had expected. It was more relaxed, more focused on building a strong sense of community. She was introduced to her team, a group of individuals who seemed just as passionate about the company's mission as the CEO himself. They welcomed her with open arms, eager to get to know her and share their experiences. As the day went on, Laura quickly realized that this job was going to be different. The focus wasn't just on the work, it was on the people. There was a sense of trust, a belief that everyone had something valuable to contribute. And it wasn't just about checking boxes or meeting quotas. It was about making an impact, building relationships, and being a part of something that mattered. Over the next few weeks, Laura settled into her new role. She worked closely with her team, learning the ropes and gradually taking on more responsibilities. The work itself was challenging, but it was also incredibly rewarding. She found herself using the very skills the CEO had recognized during the interview, listening, understanding, and connecting with others in a way that made them feel heard and valued. Her confidence grew with each passing day. She was no longer the unsure, nervous woman who had walked into the cafe that day, unsure of how to make ends meet. She was becoming someone who was capable, someone who could contribute meaningfully to the work around her. And as she took on more challenges, she realized that the skills she had developed in her personal life, empathy, patience, kindness, were the very things that were helping her succeed in her professional life. But it wasn't just about the work. It was about the relationships she was building. She found herself mentoring a younger colleague, helping them navigate the complexities of the job. She built friendships with people she admired and respected, and she became more involved in the company's efforts to create a positive, inclusive environment. As the months went by, Laura continued to grow, both personally and professionally. She found herself stepping into leadership roles, taking on projects that required her to tap into the very qualities that had made her stand out to the CEO in the first place. She was no longer just following directions. She was leading with compassion and understanding, inspiring others to do the same. Through it all, Laura never forgot the lesson that had started it all. Kindness. The simple act of buying lunch for a stranger had led her down a path she never could have predicted. It had shown her that sometimes the smallest gestures can have the biggest impact, and it had reminded her that, in the end, it's not just about what you can do for yourself. It's about how you can help others along the way. As the years went by, Laura found herself thriving in the company. The CEO, who had once been a stranger, became a mentor and a friend. They often sat down to discuss the company's future, and he would tell her how proud he was of the way she had grown into her role. But more than anything, he always reminded her of the one thing that had made her stand out from the very beginning: her ability to connect, to build relationships, and to lead with empathy. One afternoon, as Laura sat in her office reflecting on how far she had come, she received a message from the CEO. It was brief, just a few lines, but it carried so much weight. I just wanted to say, once again, how grateful I am that you joined this company. You're not just a great employee. You're someone who makes a difference every single day. Keep doing what you're doing. Laura smiled as she read the message. It was moments like this that reminded her how far she had come. The small, seemingly insignificant choice she had made years ago to help a stranger had changed the course of her life. And as she sat there reflecting on the journey, she realized that sometimes the right decisions aren't always the ones that make the most sense at the time. They're the ones that come from the heart. Months had passed since Laura started her new role at the company. The excitement of starting something new had long since settled into a steady rhythm. The initial nervousness she had felt had faded, replaced by confidence and a deeper understanding of the work. She was no longer the new hire, but someone who had proven herself in ways she had never imagined. Her relationship with her team had grown stronger. They trusted her, relied on her, and valued the empathy and patience she brought to the table. She had become more than just a colleague. She had become a mentor, someone who others looked up to for guidance, support, and advice. And that felt good. It felt like she was finally doing something that mattered, not just for herself, but for the people around her. Still, despite all the progress she had made, there was a part of her that couldn't quite shake the memory of the day she had first walked into the cafe and met the man who would change her life. The memory of him was still vivid in her mind. The way he had looked that day, tired, worn out, and uncertain, felt so different from the polished, confident CEO she now worked with. Sometimes, she wondered if things would have turned out differently if she hadn't offered to buy his lunch. What if she had kept her last dollar for herself like everyone else might have done? Would she still be here in this role with these people doing the work she loved? She wasn't sure. But what she did know was that the decision she had made that day had led her down a path she couldn't have anticipated, and she was grateful for it. One afternoon, Laura sat in her office reviewing a report that was due by the end of the day. Her office, now decorated with a few personal touches, photos of her family, a small potted plant, and a framed quote that read, "Kindness is the language the deaf can hear and the blind can see," felt like home. She had worked hard to create a space that was both professional and personal, a place where she could think clearly and focus on her work. Her phone buzzed on the desk, breaking her concentration. It was an email from the CEO. He was inviting her to a meeting later that afternoon to discuss some of the upcoming changes in the company. The email was short and to the point, but it piqued Laura's curiosity. She hadn't expected to be involved in any high-level discussions, at least not so soon. Her role was important, but she wasn't exactly in charge of major decisions. Still, she was eager to find out what he had in mind. The meeting room was quiet when she arrived. The CEO was already there, along with a few other senior members of the team. They greeted her with smiles, and she took a seat at the table, feeling a slight nervousness settle in. She had been in meetings like this before, but this one felt different. She had a sense that something important was about to unfold. "Laura, I'm glad you could join us," the CEO said, his tone warm but businesslike. "We've been having some discussions about the future of the company, and I want to make sure you're aware of the direction we're taking." You've been doing incredible work in your role, and I think it's time to start involving you in some of the bigger decisions moving forward." The word sent a wave of excitement through Laura. She had worked hard to earn the trust and respect of her colleagues, but this was different. This was a vote of confidence in her abilities, a recognition that she had grown beyond the person she had been when she first walked into the company. "We're planning a major expansion, and we need to ensure that we have the right people in place to manage the changes," the CEO continued. "I've been impressed with your leadership, your ability to connect with others, and your commitment to the company's values. That's why I want to offer you a new position. It's a leadership role, and it will come with more responsibility. We need someone who can guide the team through this transition, someone who can keep the culture intact as we grow." Laura's heart raced. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment that would define the next chapter of her career. But with that excitement came uncertainty. A leadership role would be a huge step. She wasn't sure she was ready for the weight of those responsibilities. The CEO must have seen the hesitation in her eyes because he smiled and leaned forward. "I know this is a big decision, but I believe you're more than capable of handling it. You've proven yourself time and time again. You've shown that you have the skills, the vision, and most importantly, the heart to lead. We need someone like you in this role." Laura took a deep breath. She had always believed that the most important thing in life was to take risks, to challenge yourself and to grow. And this was one of those moments. The decision wouldn't be easy, but she knew it was time to step up and take on a new challenge. "I'm honored by the offer," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've learned so much in my time here, and I would love the opportunity to help guide the team as we move forward." The CEO nodded, pleased with her response. "I'm confident that you'll do great things in this role. You're exactly what we need." The meeting continued, but Laura's mind was racing. She couldn't believe what had just happened. A leadership position, something she had never imagined for herself, at least not this soon. But there it was, right in front of her, an opportunity to make a real difference. As the day wore on, Laura couldn't focus on anything else. She thought about the people she had met along the way, the ones who had believed in her, who had seen something in her that she hadn't yet seen in herself. The CEO had taken a chance on her, not because of her technical skills or her years of experience, but because of her character, her ability to connect with others, and her genuine desire to make a positive impact. That night, as she sat at her kitchen table staring at her phone, Laura couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. The decision was huge. It would require everything she had learned in her career so far, and more, but she knew that she couldn't back away from it. This was the next step in her journey, the next opportunity for growth, and she was ready to take it. The next morning, Laura walked into the office with a sense of purpose. The new role had been officially offered to her, and she had accepted. As she walked to her desk, she noticed a few colleagues giving her knowing looks and smiles. They had heard the news. They were happy for her, and some of them even congratulated her. She felt a sense of pride and gratitude, but also a deep sense of responsibility. The work ahead would be challenging, but it was exactly what she had been waiting for. It was her chance to take everything she had learned and apply it in a new way, to make a lasting impact on the company and the people around her. The CEO pulled her aside later that day to discuss the transition. They talked about her new role, the changes she would be overseeing, and the support she would have from the leadership team. He made it clear that he trusted her to handle the responsibilities and that he would be there to support her every step of the way. As they spoke, Laura couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. The woman who had walked into the cafe with only $1 to her name, who had helped a stranger without expecting anything in return, was now in a position of leadership. It was a reminder of how unpredictable life could be, how a single decision could change everything. As the conversation ended, the CEO shook her hand and smiled. "I'm looking forward to seeing what you'll accomplish in this new role," he said. Laura smiled back, feeling a sense of excitement and gratitude wash over her. She was ready to face the challenges ahead. This was just the beginning of the next chapter of her story. Weeks passed since Laura had officially stepped into her new role. She'd navigated the challenges of the transition and embraced her new responsibilities, but there was always a part of her that wondered if she was truly ready. It felt like an endless balancing act between leading others and staying grounded in the things that mattered most to her. Every day she faced decisions that tested her ability to manage people, projects, and herself. But with each challenge, she found herself growing. The team she now led had become her second family. They supported her, challenged her, and made the days feel like a shared mission rather than just a job. Her leadership wasn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It was about listening and being present. She had learned early on that when you connect with people on a human level, they'll follow you, not because of your title, but because they believe in you. And she had earned their trust. One afternoon, as she sat in her office, sorting through some emails and preparing for a meeting, she received a message from the CEO. His words were brief but purposeful. "I'd like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss the future of the company. Please come prepared to share your thoughts." Laura's heart skipped a beat. She had been working hard and making sure the department was on track, but she didn't know exactly what the CEO wanted to discuss. She immediately wondered if there were problems she hadn't anticipated or areas where she had fallen short. But then, she stopped herself. She had been leading with honesty and integrity. She had made mistakes, sure, but she had learned from each of them and tried to improve. There was no reason to panic. She would go into the meeting with an open mind, prepared to listen and offer her perspective. The next day, she arrived at the CEO's office early. She had spent the morning thinking about what she wanted to say. There were a lot of changes happening within the company, and she wanted to contribute her ideas about how they could keep their culture intact while scaling. But as she sat in the lobby waiting for the meeting to begin, she couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming. When the CEO finally walked in, he greeted her with a smile, but there was a serious air about him. He gestured for her to follow him into the meeting room where several other senior leaders were already seated. This wasn't a one-on-one discussion. It was a meeting that involved the future of the entire company. "Laura, I'm glad you're here," the CEO began as they sat down. "We've been making some big decisions about the direction we want to take moving forward. As you know, the company is growing, and with growth comes new challenges. But it also brings opportunities to make an even bigger impact in the industry." Laura nodded, her mind racing. She knew the company was at a crossroads, but she hadn't expected this kind of meeting so soon. She was being asked to contribute to the vision for the company's future, something that felt both exciting and overwhelming. The CEO continued. "We've been discussing how to ensure that the values we've built this company on, integrity, empathy, collaboration, remain at the core of everything we do, even as we expand. And that's why I've asked you to be part of this conversation. You've been a key player in creating that culture within your team, and I think your insight is crucial moving forward." The other leaders in the room nodded in agreement, and Laura felt a swell of pride. This was it, the moment she had been working toward since the day she had walked into the company. It wasn't just about managing a department anymore. It was about shaping the company's identity in a way that stayed true to the values that had first drawn her to it. "I appreciate the trust you've placed in me," Laura said, her voice steady. "I've always believed that the foundation of any successful business is its people. If we take care of our teams, the work will follow. But we also need to find ways to evolve, to stay ahead in a competitive industry." The CEO smiled, clearly pleased with her response. "Exactly. We need leaders who understand the importance of maintaining that balance, growth without losing sight of what's important." The conversation shifted to logistics and projections for the upcoming year. There were discussions about new markets to enter, potential partnerships, and areas where the company could improve. Laura took notes, contributing when necessary, but mostly listening, absorbing the wealth of knowledge in the room. It was an incredible experience, but also humbling. She was now part of the conversation that would shape the company's future. As the meeting drew to a close, the CEO turned to her and said, "Laura, you've been with us for a while now, and I can see how much you've grown. I'd like to offer you something that I think is well-deserved." The room fell silent. Laura looked at him, unsure of what he meant. Was this another position, another role? She wasn't sure if she was ready for any more responsibility at the moment. But the CEO's next words caught her off guard. "We've been thinking about succession planning," he said, "and I believe you're someone who could step into an executive role in the near future. I want to make sure you have the support you need to succeed in that capacity, should the opportunity arise. But I'm not offering this just as a title. I want to ensure that you have the right mentorship and the experience necessary to lead the company at that level. The words hung in the air. Laura's mind raced. This wasn't just about a new project or another promotion. It was about a future she hadn't even considered. She had spent so much time focused on the day-to-day of her current role that she hadn't thought much about what the future might hold. But now the possibility was there, and it was as real as the chair she was sitting in. "Of course," she said, her voice soft but confident. "I'm honored by your confidence in me. I'm committed to continuing the work we've been doing, and if there's an opportunity for me to step up, I will give it my all." The CEO smiled. "That's exactly why I'm bringing this up now. We want you to be prepared, not just for what's happening today, but for what's coming tomorrow.